Principal Deputy Press Secretary from the White House, Hogan Gidley, joining us today on the show. Hogan, good morning. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me on. Sorry about the delay. As you can imagine, we got a few things going on over here, but I'm glad I get to talk to you good folks today.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the program. Our Governor Greg Abbott, was at the White House last week and kind of informing the president where we were, where Texas is. What does the White House and the president think about how the governor has handled things here in Texas? And what are we seeing as far as, ventilators and everything else that's gone into Texas from the federal government?
Well, he thinks, your governor's doing a great job. They have a good relationship. And of course, recognizing the fact that Texas is a massive state. I've got relatives there, lived there for a little bit as well. And so I understand that, what may work in Houston doesn't necessarily work in Tyler, doesn't necessarily work in Lubbock, doesn't necessarily work in El Paso. And what works in Texas doesn't necessarily work in Tennessee. So, making sure the governors have, kind of the control over how they begin to reopen at the local level, this president felt was important. He's had a few governors here, some Democrats, some Republican, to have conversations about best practices. What's worked in your state so far? What should we be looking out for? Any pitfalls in the future? How can the federal government, work with you guys to keep keep continuing, I should say, to make sure you have what you need. Mm-hmm. That's been really important. I mean, we've sent, well over 1 million N95 masks into Texas. We have, issued all types of loans, I think around $30 billion at least at this point. About 150,000 small businesses have gotten those loans because, it's not just the health part of this. There's also a well-being part of this. And it's, as an American, problem here with this unforeseen, unprecedented crisis, there are people out there who are suffering. They can't get to work. They can't pay their bills. They're facing an economy that has fallen apart. It was built, bigger and better and stronger than it ever has before because of this president. And this virus is kind of, really taking its toll. So we're looking at ways to reopen, and we're having conversations with governors. And Texas is a great example of that partnership. And we think that's going to continue moving forward.
Hogan, I only have a couple of minutes left here. We're right up against it. But I want to ask you this. As far as we're moving into summer, there's a big fear that we could see another wave of this. Is the administration and the federal government going to keep, building up the stockpiles of PPE and ventilators and everything else, so that way, if we have another rebound, the federal government and we're gonna have a much easier time of it if we have another flare up?
Absolutely. In fact, we're expecting almost 100,000 ventilators by the end of the year based on the public-private partnerships that were historic in nature, something that had never been done before. But the president saw the shortfalls in the stockpiles and said, we can't have this anymore. It's got to be fixed. We know previous administrations ignored, restocking them, and so we're going to do it. And it's really kind of an amazing thing. And, of all the sadness out there, I mean, these people who have lost their lives, I can't imagine, and your heart goes out to their families and to their friends. But people have lost their jobs, too. And it's not just the economy, like a large behemoth. It's an economy that's made up of, American workers, people who do tough jobs every single day. And, at the bottom of this, even though we've felt such hardship and heartbreak, this is the American spirit, and it's bent, but it's not going to break. And we're going to come back stronger on the backside of this. Thankfully, the American people saw that they needed to socially distance, and they followed the guidelines. And now we're in a position to where we can begin to look at reopening in a lot of different places, and that's great news. Yeah. Should more cases pop up, the federal government is going to be there for sure. But it's incumbent upon states to look at best practices across the country and other states, but also what works for them in their state and how they begin to reopen. So it's a good thing we've given Governor Abbott and others the ability to do that. They have it. It's a thing called federalism that we hold dear here, and so we wanted to make sure governors were on the front lines with their constituents, and so they're the ones who need to figure out what's best for them. But we're here to support, and we're going to continue to do that no matter what.
Well, final question before I let you go. The former president over the weekend talking to his, and I had no idea there was the Obama Alumni Association, but he said that the president's response to this pandemic has been, quote, an absolute chaotic disaster. What is the White House's response to that?
Look, I'm not going to take a lesson on running a clean administration from the likes of Barack Obama. We've seen what they've done, whether they, his IRS targeted conservatives back when he was president. They've also targeted this administration during the campaign, things that, really should make you scared, make you terrified. If you're an American citizen, they can go after someone like Flynn the way they did, General Flynn, with the FBI weaponized. They could do it to anybody, and that's a dangerous and scary place to be. Look, I know there's going to be time for political posturing. The Democrats just seem to never stop doing it, regardless of the circumstance. You'd think during a pandemic or a crisis, he may want to offer some solutions, maybe some ideas of how you fix things, as opposed to just running off at the mouth about this president and the incredible job that we've done here, something that we never saw coming. It never happened before. We've taken control of it, taking early action to protect the American people, their lives, their well-being, and his decisions have done just that. So we're quite proud of the mobilization and the partnerships we've done, putting mechanisms in place to make sure that every single person who needed a ventilator got a ventilator, people who needed PPE got those critical supplies, something that had never been done before. And so, look, it's a horrific thing. As I mentioned before, your heart breaks for those who've lost loved ones, but at the same time, I'm proud of the work this president has done and his leadership, and just to be a small part of that, I think, is going to be one of the things I cherish for the rest of my life.
Hogan Gidley, Deputy Assistant to the President, also Principal Deputy Press Secretary. By the way, pass on to Kayleigh McEnany. She's doing an outstanding job. We've had her on the show numerous times in our past roles. She's doing a great job, and we appreciate her, and we also appreciate you joining us today.
Good deal. I'll do it, and I appreciate all the time, and we'll talk soon. And maybe when we start to reopen, we can have a football conversation.
There you
Something
go.
A little bit different than just ready to do some guns up Texas Tech talk later on.
There you go. I like that. Hogan, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.